Welcome to the ultimate crowdsourced personal finance show. This is your Friday Roundup.
You're listening to ChooseFI Radio. The blueprint for financial independence lives here. If you're looking to unlock the secrets to financial independence and early retirement, you're in the right place. Stay tuned and join a community of like-minded people who are getting off the hamster wheel and taking control of their lives in the pursuit of financial independence. ChooseFI, your home for financial independence online.
Okay, guys, welcome back. This is your Friday Roundup. Welcome to the show. I have Brad here with me, just back from his vacation. How you doing, Brad?
I am doing wonderfully, Jonathan. Yeah, I'm back in Richmond, and yeah, it was a really successful trip. We went, as I've said before, we went on a 17-day vacation, which was pretty wild to be able to take that much time off. It's funny, even though I've been out of my 9 to 5 for 2.5 years, it's still that mentality of, wow, 17 days. That's a crazy amount of time to take off. So it was very cool.
Nice. And you made it back just in time for this mind-blowing eclipse that we had, aka a cloud passed over the sun for 15 seconds.
Yeah, we were outside and it kind of got a little bit dark and yeah, you couldn't see anything. But yeah, it was still kind of a cool experience. I watched it on CNN a little bit, but what about you?
We actually made the cereal boxes. So I wanted to go buy the glasses. Well, I didn't actually. That's not true. My wife wanted to buy the glasses, but in the back of my mind, I saw Frank from our Facebook group calling me a lemming over purchasing them. So I refused to buy the glasses, but then I saw that you could make the boxes, the cereal boxes, and you look in the back and you see the reflection of it. So I actually made that and it was pretty cool. We took a couple pictures and it basically just looks like us staring at the ground, but we did it and my wife got a huge kick out of the fact that we put the time in to make those. And it was kind of neat. You saw the little crescent half-eaten moon pie. So it was kind of cool.
Nice. Yeah, that is very cool. Yeah, it's funny. Could you imagine like going on a vacation to watch the eclipse and literally one cloud passes by for 3 minutes and the whole thing is just shot to hell? How frustrating that would be.
Yeah,
I mean, people are spending like hotels were multiple times what they normally are in these places. And yeah, like just to be stuck to the whim of one particular cloud. But I know it's a total aside, but I was just thinking how frustrating that would be. But yeah, just going back to my trip for a quick second, it was amazing. I mean, we took like this ultra frugal trip and it was really about family and connections and staying with friends. I mean, we spent, I think it was 16 nights and we actually spent $0 on lodging for 16 nights of a vacation. So it was really pretty remarkable. We stayed, well, of course we used credit card points. So, our travel hacking, as we always talk about here, we wound up staying in Niagara Falls for only one night, but we used only 4,000 Starwood points. So this is why I'm constantly talking about how valuable Starwood points are. There was this great 4 Points Sheraton hotel there that was just like a block off of the falls essentially, and it was only 4,000 points a night. I mean, that was a wonderful redemption. So that was a big one. We wound up staying in my wife's college town. She went to SUNY Geneseo, and we actually paid cash to stay at a Hampton Inn, but since Laura used her Capital One Spark Miles card, we were able to wipe the expense down to zero. So those were our two like hotel nights. And they still cost us $0. So other times we stayed with family in the Adirondacks and with Laura's family, as I talked about on a couple of prior podcasts, when I was recording from the basement, and we stayed there for like 8 nights and then at friends over in Buffalo. So, I mean, this really wonderful trip was essentially just cost us gas. That was it. So it was a big savings, big frugal trip.
I'm super excited that you guys were able to pull that off. How long did you spend planning that?
So this was all Laura. I had nothing to do with it, which is really pretty nice.
Nice job, Laura.
Yeah, she's a rock star. I mean, she planned this entire like slow travel kind of trip through New York State that really, to me, at first sounded kind of random. I mean, like, I don't know. It's not a dream vacation, right? Like, oh, we're going to go through New York State. But I mean, we probably drove well over 700 miles just in New York State itself. And it's really quite a diverse place. I mean, you think of the city, but we went up to the Adirondacks. We drove all the way basically east to west across the state to Niagara Falls and then Buffalo. And it was just a really cool trip. So yeah, I mean, it wasn't all that hard to put together. We just had to coordinate with some family members and our friends. And yeah, Laura made it happen. So it was really wonderful time.
I think that aspect of slow travel is something that we need to spend more time talking about, and just contrast that with, it all ties back together. You talked about how you had this luxurious 17-day window. And I just remember and can think about continually the idea of taking 17 days off, the amount of work that starts to pile up, that you start to have panic attacks because it's going to be waiting for you when you get back. And so inevitably you try to cram everything as quickly as possible, and you try to speed up the travel part as quickly as possible so that it doesn't cut into your vacation. What if the travel is actually just built into the vacation? You're not in the rush. You have the time to make the pit stops. You get to explore these really diverse and beautiful places that normally with the run-of-the-mill traveling that you do, you never get a chance. They're drive-bys, they're flybys, but you actually get a chance to go inside the little shops, go inside the local businesses, and get a chance to be a part of these different communities as you are on this vacation. It's actually built into it. I think that is something that would be very rewarding. It makes traveling a lot more fun, and it makes a 700-mile car drive something that you will end up talking about for years to come.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. And man, I can't tell you, I mean, just in the couple days that I've been back, maybe a handful of people already, just from the few people that I've seen, said to me like, oh, wow, how now do you need a vacation from your vacation? You know, like that typical like age-old response of, because people expect you to be go, 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 right, on vacation, and it being like a stressful thing. And to me, that comes down to expectations management. And this kind of transcends travel. I mean, this is just kind of life in general. Like for me, we don't go on vacation to see every possible thing we can see and fill every minute and just be stressed, right? I mean, like, even though you're on vacation, people are stressed on vacation because they feel like they have to maximize every second of it. And maybe in fairness, that's in my case, because we are at FI or whatever you want to call it. And we do have a lot of time. So I admit fully that I have the luxury of that, but still it's also a mindset. Even when we went to Disney World a couple years ago, it was that expectations management. So we were only there for 5 days. So, I mean, nobody could argue that this was a 20-day trip and we had the luxury of time. We just said to ourselves, all right, look, everybody comes home stressed as all can be after a Disney vacation because there's so much to see and you want to cram everything in and you spend so much money and all this stuff. And we just said to ourselves, we don't want this to be a miserable trip. So every single day, we're going to go back to the hotel for a couple hours and eat lunch and go in the pool and relax and just chill out, basically. And we'll do a morning session, we'll do an afternoon or evening session at the parks, and that'll be that. And if we miss things, we just miss them and we don't care. And our kids certainly don't care because they wouldn't even know, right? And so like everybody tries to pack things in because, oh, their kids need to see every single thing. And like that was just not appealing to us. We just wanted to take a nice chill vacation. And that was exactly like this trip. We did a bunch of things. I mean, we went into New York City, saw the Statue of Liberty. We went to Fire Island, which is a really cool barrier island off of Long Island, and saw Niagara Falls. And we packed a lot of stuff in, but it was just nice and chill. And it was almost alternating days between doing something and just relaxing by the pool or walking around Laura's college or just something nice and chill. So I guess the message would be go into a vacation or any aspect of your life with, I hate to say low expectations because that's not what I'm trying to imply, but just simpler expectations. If you try to see everything, you try to do everything, inevitably it's going to lead to stress. So to me, that's just not the right way to approach things. And in my life, that works. Obviously, everybody has their own perspective, but I think it's something that is at least worth noting.
So much to hit on there. 2 points in particular. The first one is my usual confession. I was one of the people that said, Brad, do you need a vacation from your vacation? I thought I was being very original. Apparently, that's a go-to line for many people. I think it's going to require a reorientation on my part because I'm one of those people that has been in my 9 to 5. And when I have those few days that I've clawed away from my family, I want to cram every little activity in. So this is a very good conversation just for me personally to consider because I identify with the fact that time is a tool that you can put in your back pocket and you can spend it and use it in ways that you want that are no longer dictated by your 9 to 5. And so this is what the execution of that looks like. And this is what the mental game for that looks like. Don't waste opportunities like a vacation and allow yourself to get pulled into these stressful situations. Focus on what's important, which is that quality time with your family. And when you realize that time is a tool, there's many different ways that you can apply that. This isn't going to be the last time that you can take a vacation. This is not the only vacation you're going to get this year. You're in a situation where you get to determine the priorities and you get to spend that time in the ways that you want. FI allows you to reclaw your time back. And I just think this is what execution of that looks like. And it doesn't need to be this overly hyped, overly glamorous thing. It could just be quality time with your family, exploring the various parts of New York. So that's really cool. Second point, this ties in so perfectly to what we just talked about on Monday, because Monday's episode talked about an individual, Scott, making a choice with his family to leave the 9 to 5 and pursue this documentary while slow traveling around the United States and exploring in his words, the eclectic characters of FI, people that have found a way to break the hamster wheel, get off that cycle and pursue their passions and their dreams and explore what those infinite number of possibilities, those really cool paths that you can choose to get to FI actually look like. And I cannot wait to actually jump into this episode.
Yeah, agreed. I thought one of the coolest quotes from Scott's episode was from his wife, which is, what if we get a camper and do this all on the road? And that was just so awesome. Like, Scott's wife is an absolute rock star. And we're going to talk about this in the next couple of minutes, certainly. But I mean, just the fact that Scott was so excited. And right, Jonathan, he sounds exactly like you, like ultra exuberant about everything. And you can just picture like what his wife's, I mean, you especially can picture what his wife's response is, right?
Yeah. I get that pat on the head all the time.
Oh, I can imagine. I can only imagine what Danny thinks when you come to her with some wacky idea or some amazing new passion that you just picked up. And I could feel that from Scott, right? So, but how cool was it that basically in 3 months, they turned their entire lives upside down to pursue FI. And then, like he said, they're making this year-long adventure to quit his job, travel across the country, meet all these people, explore the FI community. They're going to visit their family, each of their respective families for a few months and do like what I said, which is essentially live for free and have no rent, no house payments for months at a time when they visit each of their families. And then do this slow travel across the country, not only to visit people, but to see where they want to live. And he said something to the effect of spend a month in each of a couple different places and see how they really like living there. Like, who has the opportunity to do that? I mean, what I normally hear, which with my FI lens on the world, which always makes me crazy, is people move to a different city and without even living there, without knowing anything about it, essentially, other than a day-long or a weekend-long trip, they buy a house. And I'm like, my brain is exploding when I hear this. And like we know people from around here who have 2 different families I can think of that did that. And it's just crazy to me that you would move without having some sense of like the exact like micro neighborhood where you want to live, or, oh, there's this plus or minus of our area. And like, I think that gets to kind of a larger point of people's house obsessions, right, Jonathan? We've kind of been talking about doing that episode for maybe 5 months now about the buy versus rent and things like that. And I promise out there to the audience that we are getting on this. But yeah, I mean, just take your time. I think that's probably like a larger point. It really does matter where you live and your happiness matters. Like, don't just go somewhere and freaking buy a house. It just seems crazy to me. So anyway, that's kind of a random tangent, but it really did remind me of that when Scott was talking about that. And I was just so very impressed by their decision.
Yeah, I think it comes down to that idea, at least with what you're talking about, of strategy. What is your strategy? And your home purchase should help you to some degree advance your strategy. Now, it doesn't mean that everybody's going to have the same plan in place, and you could certainly win by renting. You could certainly win by purchasing a home, but most of your choices, especially the major ones that affect your financial outcomes, should have some thought process or strategy behind it. And Scott is the perfect illustration of the different concepts that we have talked about earlier. One, design your future, right, Brad? I mean, this is what that looks like. And then when you come up with your idea, how do you make it even bigger? And then how do you make it even bigger still? Stretch yourself. Dominic's words, to use those, when you're designing your future, it should scare you a little bit. It should be something that's exciting, maybe something that makes you nervous to the point that thinking about it right now makes you want to throw up in your mouth a little bit. Start to be more creative with what this future is actually going to look like. So I'm not saying that you need to execute on that, but you need to stretch yourself just a little bit. And certainly you could say that Scott doing this would certainly meet the criteria at every level. And I think it's going to be a wonderful decision for them.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I imagine when Dominic listened to this episode and you talk about design your future, how Scott framed this around happiness. And he had that little thing that he did with his wife where he asked her to write down a list of things that make you happy on a weekly basis. And yeah, as you bring up Dominic, that just reminds of something that he might do for people that he coaches or some such. And it was just such an inspired thing that Scott did. And when his wife came back with that list, it was all a list of things that they could do living anywhere. It didn't matter if they lived in beautiful Coronado or anywhere, essentially, right? It was read her baby a book, listen to her baby laugh, go for a walk with the family, have a glass of wine, eat chocolate, and things like that. Like, those are things you can do anywhere. And I think when most of us really reflect on what makes us happy, it has very, very little to do with your area, high cost of living or low cost of living area. It's the people you're with, it's your family, it's your connections, it's those type of real fundamental things. And yeah, I mean, again, absolutely inspired by Scott. And just, the fact that his wife, and this is not to pick on wives or husbands, it has nothing to do with gender by any means. It was just that Scott found this first and then had to basically convince his wife. But I mean, the fact that she was so on board with this is really a remarkable thing. It's 3 months from him listening to that Tim Ferriss podcast on February 13th of 2017 to making this decision to upend their life. And that is really pretty remarkable.
Yeah, that support system, that structural support system. I mean, really, she's the unsung hero of this past week's episode. We spent this entire time talking and putting the focus on Scott's decision tree, but this only works because Taylor said, Scott, why don't we go ahead and just get a camper and do this slow travel thing for a year? She's the unsung hero of this story. And it really is remarkable that she met him halfway on this idea, and it's what makes it possible. And we're all going to benefit from it. So a personal thank you to Taylor for saying yes. Next thing he did here, Brad, sell your value first. Scott is the perfect example of what selling your value looks like first. He didn't just create a documentary, spend $100,000 or $200,000, and then say, oh, I wonder if anybody will watch it. He reached out to his network, and he actually created a network from scratch. He went from knowing nobody to reaching out to, in this case, it was Brad and me. And Brad and me. I'm going to go with one of them and you pick which one is right. And just seeing whether or not there was interest there. And then he rapidly expanded that to the other players that could help him achieve and realize this dream. And he quickly saw that there was a huge interest in seeing this idea come to life. And so there's so much to touch on here that it's its own episode, but this idea of using your network. And if you don't have a network in the space that you want to have, position yourself to access somebody else's and build trust quickly, which is an idea that he hit on. And even as I'm saying this to you from the perspective of someone that actually saw this happen. He did this when I talked about how if you don't have a network, you should position yourself to access someone else's. He accessed ours. And I got a front row seat to actually see what this looks like when it's executed perfectly. And it's a beautiful thing. And if I were going to take just a second to expand on that idea, it was just incredible to see how quickly he was able to build this trust inside of our community. And so he is connected now with people in the Chautauqua in Ecuador, in the UK. He's going to be with us down at Camp Mustache. He's been invited to FinCon. I mean, this is what it looks like to do it in a very genuine, honest, win-win way. And so there's pieces there to latch onto. This is what networking, when it's done right, actually looks like. It's not glad handing out your business cards. It's this idea of creating true friends with people and then relying on friends for things that you need down the road that will help everybody out. It's win-win situations.
Yeah, this really was a case study in networking. And like you said, that genuine human connection. I mean, I know I personally connected with Scott immediately. And that was a big deal to me of why I went to bat for him. So he sent us a voicemail and he was just so excited. And I mean, I think I jumped on the phone with him within 24 hours of getting that voicemail. And Scott is just an exuberant guy. He's a talker. I mean, we were on the phone for like 90 minutes, I think, that first day. And I could just feel the passion. And I knew instantly that I wanted to help him because I thought this was a great idea for a project. So obviously, I want the FI community to grow. So clearly, there's some interest on my part. I wouldn't say self-interest, but just interest on my part to seeing the FI community grow. But I thought that he was the person to do it based on his background, based on his passion, based on his story. So it was someone that I wanted to go to bat for. And if he was just some kind of jerk or pompous about all these things that he could do and how he X, Y, and Z, like it just wouldn't have connected with me. But I instantly connected with Scott, and not for nothing, but I've built up this network in the FI community where I have trust and where people do know and like, or whatever you want to call it, me personally. And when I set up these connections with him, people are going to get on the phone with him or email with him. So it's a good foot in the door for him. But Scott brought it home. I mean, I had nothing to do with that. He convince people that this is a project that is going to be real and is going to be significant, and that he would love to have their help and their input. And I mean, people just jumped on this. It's really been pretty remarkable. And now, I mean, Scott has gone way beyond us here, certainly. Like we always say, like, this is not, none of this is about us. You know, ChooseFI, we don't have delusions of grandeur. We just want this community to grow, the FI community. So, I mean, Scott now, like Jonathan said, every time we talk to him, he's involved in something else. He's going down to Ecuador for the Chautauqua, or he's been in touch with Alan and they have plans for the future. And like, you know, he has just all these things that this is just going to be a remarkable project. And I know just from talking to him behind the scenes, like he has really, really big plans for this. So, I mean, this could be the moment that FI goes mainstream, right, Jonathan? I mean, that's not inconceivable.
Oh, it's beyond not inconceivable. In my mind, it's predictable at this point. I mean, this community and the interest in this idea has been on what we've called a hockey stick trajectory for the last, I would say, year or two. And it's been waiting just for that door to be opened. And it's not just me and you realizing this. We have people in our community that actually have reached out to him and partnered with him on this. He's actually gotten access to a Emmy-nominated production team. And on top of that, they've made connections with people that have actually produced award-winning documentaries that are now mentoring them through this process and giving them access to those channels. This thing the fire has been lit under this documentary, and it is racing toward the finish line. And we can't wait to share the updates with you guys and be there when it lands, because you were there behind the scenes for this entire journey. But aside from that, just watching Scott continue to be consistent with the message that we've talked about, which is using your network, relying on your network, expanding your network, and implementing these different ideas that we talked about, frankly, with Alan Donegan on selling your value first. It's kind of, I like the idea of taking people that have used these skills in radically different ways, but it all comes back to this core message. And the fact that he is able to do this while pursuing FI and at the same time talking about FI is, like, to me, the ultimate example of what we're trying to get across with this. Design your future, my friends, and don't limit yourself.
Yeah, and I just wanted to quickly plug, as Jonathan mentioned, us keeping you guys updated with the documentary and such. And Scott definitely plans to do that. I know we mentioned his website on the Monday episode, but I wanted to reiterate, it's playingwithfire.co. So if you sign up there, there's a subscribe button, I think, at the bottom of the homepage. It's pretty obvious. And, you know, you'll get, every time he sends out updates or posts something new, you can just automatically get an update. So, I mean, this is really the most exciting thing going on in the FI community, in my opinion, over the next year. So there is no reason not to head over to playingwithfire.co and just sign up for that subscription. And yeah, you'll get all the updates. So I think that's a couple seconds well spent, certainly.
All right. Now, Paige sent us an email, and I think it adds some important context, and it's about limiting beliefs. And she prefaced it by saying, this is coming from a super supportive place. But in the episode with Scott, you talked about the documentary not letting people off the hook. And then you said it's impossible to live in the San Diego area for $50,000 a year. So Paige says she's not going to let us off the hook for that one. She says, I live in LA, which is arguably more expensive than San Diego, on $30,000 a year, and that includes a mortgage and student loans. My partner lives on about $10,000 a year because he paid for his half of their house with cash. Now, we don't have kids, but I think we could very reasonably add one for $10,000 a year. So you can live in California for $50,000 a year if you want to. And she's added this extra thought, which we don't hit on this enough, and it's because we just haven't had enough episodes under our belt. I think by the time we come to at the end of our first or second year, a lot of this stuff we will be able to hit on. But Paige says, I've come to realize over the course of the last 2 years, and this year especially, that I may be living a somewhat intense lifestyle. Now, I never saw it that way before because I had never earned enough to live and save just enough to live. So it never seemed extreme until it became a choice. My partner was able to save enough to achieve financial independence in LA, never really earning more than $50,000 a year. He believes in the retire often approach, so he has pursued a lot of passion projects by taking time off and still got to FIRE by 45. And again, and she's sent us some stuff before, but she says it's all about savings rate. So I get it. If you're talking within the context of little tweaks, yes. But if you want to live in a high cost of living area and you want to fire on a low income, you can do it. You may just need to be a little more intense. She says, I just wanted to chime in and not let people in California and other high cost of living areas off the hook. That's nice. I like that because I think all of us tend to latch on to the reasons that we can't do stuff. Oh, well, he said people in San Diego, we can't fire on a low income. We can't hit this. We have to move and we're not going to move. So this doesn't work for us. And that's a set of limiting beliefs because there are people in every walk of life, in every aspect of life, in every socioeconomic circle that have figured out a way to be slightly more creative than you. And you can learn from them and be slightly more creative than your neighbor. And it's just finding someone to model your journey that's found a way to do something that you hadn't thought of yet. Look at the problem slightly differently.
Yeah, and I'm glad that Paige didn't let us off the hook here. I like this. And she's one of our super users, right, Jonathan? She's constantly sending us emails with really value-added stuff. And, frankly, like having her and her partner on the podcast for an episode to talk through their life, that sounds pretty interesting to me. Like, I just thought of that while you're reading her email, but she said her partner reached FI in California by 45 and not ever really making more than $50,000 a year. So, I guess one of our criticisms that we received is that many of the people who come on our podcast are engineers or doctors or whomever, and they make a decent amount of money. So having the FI perspective from a slightly lower income level would be very valuable. So I think if we don't have them on, then someone similar, certainly, I think that would add a lot of context to people. But as far as thinking about a problem differently, so I was actually just listening to Paula Pant's Afford Anything podcast, and I think it came out a couple of days ago. And she was talking about precisely that, about high cost of living areas, which is what Paige was talking about in her email, which it's just thinking a little bit differently. Like, who says that a 35-year-old can't have a roommate? That was something that Paula made that point. Like, everybody says, right, quote unquote, in society, like, once you reach a certain age, you shouldn't have a roommate or something like that. Like, it's not a sign of maturity. But Paula's contention was, okay, well, that's fine. Everybody says that. But I can save a whole heck of a lot of money if I share an apartment with a roommate or multiple roommates. Or even she said something to the effect of, everybody says when you have kids, you could never have a roommate. But she had multiple examples in her extended family and friend circle of people who did precisely that and are on the path to FI. So it's not that I'm necessarily advocating that, plus or minus. I don't really care, but it's just when everybody says something, you don't have to believe it. And I think we fell prey to that here with Scott's episode of just kind of flippantly saying, oh, you could never live in San Diego or in Coronado for under $50,000 a year, or you could never pursue FI on that income. And that is just patently false, as Paige proved to us, right? So we have limiting beliefs and we have things that we just kind of flippantly say because that's what we've been trained to do. And that's just not good enough. So I really, really appreciate that Paige reached out to us on this because it just illuminates an example of, hey guys, you talk about this all the time, but even you have these limiting beliefs sometimes. So if we have it and we talk about this many, many hours a week, then everybody has it. And we all just need to think a little bit differently. So yeah, a huge thank you to Paige.
And in my mind, I view it as this decision tree that everybody needs to slowly start working through. And the two most obvious levers are that you have offense and defense. And you need to play both of those and you need to figure out where you want to start. And if you decide that making more money isn't an option, then you're going to need to be a little bit more aggressive with your defense. You're going to need to have a rock solid defense and you're going to need to be more creative. You're never going to get a $200,000 lifestyle for $30,000 a year. Actually, Justin from Root of Good might contest that. But in general, if you decide that you're going to fire on $30,000 a year and making more isn't an option, you're going to need to be very creative with that defense. And this isn't to say that you need to geo arbitrage, but if we can provide you by finding people that have already done it, a diverse array of different tools and levers that you can pull that will work with the strategy that you've decided to implement, then you're going to be really well off. And you don't have to do everything, but you're going to have to do something creative in order to to make it work. And you just ultimately have to pull the levers that you're comfortable with pulling. And if it's geo arbitrage, that could be a game changer for you. But if it's not geo arbitrage, I suspect that you're going to need to look at how to do housing in a more creative manner. And then you can figure out what that looks like. It could be a roommate, or it could be a house hacking situation where you live for free. It doesn't matter which one you choose. We're not putting our value judgments on you for that. But you need to understand the rules of how this game is played, and it helps when you have people model it for you. And by the way, for those of you that are thinking that Paige is living in a van down by the river, Paige actually wanted to post down at the bottom, FYI, we live in a nice 3-bedroom, 2-bath house. The house is a fixer, and we're still working on it, but we aren't in a storage container, tiny house, or living in a van down by the river. So there's also a few people on the Mr. Money Mustache forum living extremely frugal lifestyle in the LA area. So she says, I am not unique. Anyways, Paige, thank you so much for sending us your thoughts. And I think it really did add to this conversation. So we appreciate another rant. Those are your words. We appreciate your rants. And we hope that you will continue to send them to us as they catch your fancy.
Yeah. And I think what Paige said about intensity, right? Like that might be a truth. And again, I hate to paint broad strokes here, but is it harder to reach FI on a $50,000 a year income in Los Angeles or Iowa? I suspect strongly that it's Los Angeles, right? Like, so to Paige's point, she just needs to be a little more intense. And I think that's something that, you know, we should all kind of keep in our mind, not the intensity per se, but just that, okay, well, we all make decisions, right? And that's something that at ChooseFI, Jonathan and I constantly talk about. We're not here to dictate. There are no absolutes that you must follow to be a member of the ChooseFI family. That is nothing of what we preach at all. It's everybody makes choices. Everybody has a value system. And as long as you're being intentional and you're thinking through a decision, then we could never fault any decision. But that said, living in a high cost of living area is going to, in my opinion, be slightly more difficult to reach FI. Now, does that mean it's impossible? No, but you might need to be a little more intense in some aspects. So I've talked many, many times in this podcast about how I picked up and moved. We lived on Long Island, which is, you know, a suburb of New York City, and it is expensive there. It just flat out is. You know, taxes on houses there are $10,000 to $15,000 a year. House prices in any kind of town we wanted to live in were easily over $400,000. And like we talked about on Scott's episode, it's the add-ons. It's everything. Car insurance was 3 times what I'm paying here in Richmond. And buying gas to heat your home in the winter was, I mean, I know my in-laws spend hundreds upon hundreds of dollars every single month. Like it's all these things. But I guess the question that I think about is, could we have achieved FI? Could we have reached FI if we lived on Long Island? And I think the answer is yes, we clearly could have, but it would have been more difficult. And in our opinion, we would have always had to have given something up that was important to us. And maybe in fairness, since I don't know, I haven't lived there for 12 years, maybe we could have been slightly more intense, like Paige said, or done something that was slightly out of the ordinary and made it happen so that we didn't have to give anything up. But at least in our brains, that was the decision. So we picked up and moved, you know, almost similar to how Scott did it. Like Laura and I try to think back to that decision point, and we didn't sit there and labor over the decision for months and go back and forth and worry about whether it would work or if our family would be mad or anything. We just sat there and said, A, this will be a fun adventure, and B, it is going to give us the opportunity to have the lives that we want. And one of those things, even though when we were kids, you know, we were 25, 26 years old when we made this decision, we knew that we were going to have kids someday in the not too distant future, and that in our perfect world scenario, we wanted Laura to stay home with the kids. And that was something that thankfully was on our mind at that age, and we were able to achieve that. And again, in our opinion, without doing something crazy intense, would not have been able to do that on Long Island. It just would not have been possible based on the structure that we were living under. So at this point, what's amazing actually is that in 2 weeks from now, my youngest daughter, Molly, is going to go to kindergarten, and Laura will have stayed home with the kids without really working, except for a little bit during tax busy season every year. But she'll have stayed home with the kids for over 9 years, 9.25 years. And that's actually, that chapter of our lives is coming to an end in 2 weeks now, which is pretty bittersweet. But it's amazing that we were able to do that and constructed this plan for our lives. And we succeeded at it wildly, and while pursuing FI and while nearly achieving FI, or depending on your definition, achieving FI. So our plan has worked wonderfully. And at this point, it is kind of bittersweet that that chapter of our lives is quickly coming to a close.
I think what you said there is really insightful. And I think it's probably a fear that a lot of us have. And just to kind of dive into what I mean by that, especially when you're making a lot of traction, maybe as a couple in your 20s or early 30s and you're dual income, maybe you're dual income, no kids, transitioning to now maybe you have a kid on the way. It can be a little bit daunting, maybe even a little bit scary, because if all of the math that you've done to reach your FI number was based on two incomes, and suddenly that is cut in half or some percentage, that is going to change the equation. So I think to see what other people have done and that it is still possible is so important. But I just want to encourage you by saying there are people that have done this that make less than you and have had to make harder choices than you will have to make, and you can still get to FI. So don't allow that shadow of doubt, that limiting belief to creep into your life that says, oh, we're a single income family. I can't do this anymore. Or, oh, I live in a high cost of living area. This doesn't apply to me. It does work for you. And you're going to need to figure out what levers you can still pull to allow yourself to get there.
That touches on something that I actually want to spend a larger amount of time than just today, maybe even a Monday episode on, which is a real close friend of mine from back home. I was speaking with him recently, and he listened to a bunch of our early podcast episodes, and he actually stopped listening. And I asked him why, because, I thought he was just someone who would eat this up. But he said that he kind of got frustrated because he realized that he's done everything wrong in life, quote unquote, financially. And it just didn't seem like it was for him. And that was completely understandable. And I do see where he's coming from. But also at the same point, it was really demoralizing for me because it means, we're not getting this message across as well as possible. And I think in fairness, Jonathan, you and I have been a lot better about this after those early episodes. But you can be on this path to FI no matter where you are, no matter who you are, no matter what decisions you've made in the past. It's about just being intentional and moving forward and just trying to get a little bit better in my opinion, in every aspect of your life. This is like a total life optimization strategy, in my opinion. But even just talking about the finances is you can do little things to move forward. And it doesn't matter if you've quote unquote done everything wrong. You can still save money next month on your meal prep, or you can save time by doing that. You can shop around for auto insurance. You can do all sorts of things. We probably have a list of maybe 50 things, and we should probably catalog these, Jonathan, and especially in the Facebook group, of things that you could put into place in the next month that would actually move the needle, right? Like changing your cell phone, the things that we talked about on the Pillars of FI episode, changing your cell phone bill. People spend $80 to $100 a month on their cell phone. I spend about 12 to 15 on mine using Republic Wireless. That's a big difference. And if you have a couple people in your family, that can save you $200 a month. That's $2,400 a year. That's not an insignificant amount of money. And that's just something you can do in 5 seconds. There are many, many of these things. And it doesn't matter if maybe you've even done some of the structural things, quote unquote, wrong. You bought an expensive house or an expensive car. Well, that's all well and good. That doesn't mean you're doomed. I assume you're getting by, even with these, as you say, wrong decisions. So you're not wallowing in debt. You're at least making it. Okay, well, if you can then make a couple of better decisions, no matter where you are, and again, no matter who you are, no matter how much money you make, if you make slightly more optimized decisions going forward, almost by definition, you're going to be in a better place. Now, does that mean you're going to reach FI in 7 to 10 years, like many people who started out and did this exactly right, if you will, from the very beginning? No, probably not. But are you going to be much, much wealthier 20, 30, 40 years from now? Yes. There's no question about that. So FI and ChooseFI, this is not about being 20 years old or 22 years old, getting out of college, house hacking, doing everything right from the first second, and retiring at 34. That is not our only audience, clearly. We have people from 20 up to 80 in this audience. I mean, it's everyone. Don't think, and I get this so many times, like, oh, we're in our 50s, we started late, or, oh, we thought we were doing well, and now we hear all you young people who are retiring early. Well, don't have those negative thoughts. Don't have those limiting beliefs. Like, you did the best that you could in your situation, and you made the right moves for your life. I don't want people feeling badly about themselves listening to this podcast. Like, this is all about positivity and happiness and making life a little bit better. So again, this is a much longer conversation than maybe just the couple minutes that I spent on this little monologue here, but it's really important that everyone gets their mindset right. There's no perfect person for FI. There's no perfect situation for FI. It's just about being a little bit better going forward and making your life a little happier and, like I said, a little bit better. So that's kind of my deal, and I think it's important that we all remember that.
And as a highlighter, if you didn't listen to the Roundup this past Friday, it featured a voicemail from Chris. And Chris basically said he had been following us from our first episode back in January. And over a period of about just 3 months, he had implemented enough changes, focusing on defense, cutting out waste, cutting out subscription services that weren't going to be used, that within a 10-year period of time, he anticipated saving $140,000. Now, just focus on that, assuming that you're just breaking even right now and you haven't made any changes in your life and you have this currently what you've identified, I've been doing everything wrong. You know what that means? There is a lot of waste in your life. There's a lot of places that you can optimize things. And if you just take a 3-month period of time and go through all the different levers that you can pull and you start executing on some of these things that other people have figured out, you go and you take a look at your car insurance, your homeowner's insurance, you take a look at your subscription services, your food bill, your cell phone bill. Money is leaking out of your budget. Instead of wondering where your money goes, you start dictating the direction for your life and for your future. You tell your money exactly where to go and you place priorities on where that money's going based on the goals that you want to achieve. And you plug those leaks. And it just starts with a little bit of focus. In 10 years, you could save $140,000 or more. And does that put you in a worse situation? Now, if you look at it from the set of limiting beliefs, oh, if I had found this 20 years ago. No, you found it now. You didn't find it 10 years from now. You found it now. Do you have 10 years left in your timeline to make some small changes that will allow you to recapture $140,000 worth of savings? And do you think that by making those series of choices, your life will be in a better shape? Your 10-year future self is begging you not to wallow in self-pity, but to start taking action. Wake up. Make a change today that will allow you to be in better shape 10 years from now. So this is kind of interesting. And this is an email that we got from Art Vandelay. Interesting. There's actually a person out there that has the same name as the architect from Seinfeld. What a coincidence. Really amazing. But Art Vandelay says, first, guys, I've listened to thousands of hours of many different types of podcasts. Many are boring. Most are poorly produced. I suffer through most for the possibility of finding a little nugget of knowledge or a giggle locked within. I found ChooseFI a few weeks ago and have now listened to every episode to date. You both should be proud of the work you're doing. It seems like you've been doing this for years. There's nothing else like it in the podcast universe. It's entertaining, informative, professionally produced, and just plain awesome. My lovely wife is on board now too. Hardcore FI after only a few weeks. We've always been pretty frugal, but have already saved thousands by using some simple changes from the show, the cell phone, cut the cable, home energy tweaks, and Aldi rules, by the way, Brad. We broke our budget down and we found that nearly $40,000 a year just goes missing annually. We've got plans in place to rein all that in and have a set goal to max out my 401k, her 403b, her 457, and both of our IRAs. Thank you so much. Lastly, maybe you should consider stopping the fire from spreading. Maybe it should be our little secret. Have we all forgotten that ridiculous consumption and spending is what feeds the global economy, allowing our investments in VTSEX to thrive? Think of the economic damage if we were all FI. Consumer goods, banks, restaurants, cable providers, new car sales would all struggle to survive. So please, shh, let's keep the fire between us. Once again, amazing job. Gentleman, Art Vandelay. Art, thanks so much for the feedback. We appreciate the compliment and also just the general thoughts there. And congratulations on those radical changes. This is what we're talking about. Your 10-year future self is so grateful to you today for the choices that you've decided to make. You're crushing it.
Yeah, and this actually reminded me of one particular quote that Scott's wife asked him that he mentioned in the podcast, which is, why isn't everybody doing this? And he said, the logical thought is that it's too good to be true. And I hear a lot of this with the travel reward stuff too. It's people, when they hear about it, their minds are closed. Like they think that because they haven't heard of it or that it sounds so different from anything they've ever heard of, that it is too good to be true. And I just hate that, as we've said, that limiting belief or just that closed mind. And I don't know, I'm always open to new opportunities and new ideas. Like, I just don't understand why so many people who, frankly, many of these people who are living paycheck to paycheck and are just getting through the day are not open to something that could potentially change their lives radically and in such positive ways. And, in some level, I almost wonder if they've been pitched so many like sketchy things that many of these kind of shark salesmen who hit them with fees and all these other things, that they almost just close their mind to everything. And that's like a really sad way to go through life, in my opinion. And I think you should understand and be skeptical of new things, that everything is not what it seems, right? There are some unscrupulous people out there who are just trying to take your money, but there are other instances where, wow, like there are reputable people doing this, and this is not too good to be true. There are people that are succeeding in this, and you see just Jonathan and I, right? I'm a CPA, Jonathan's a pharmacist. We're not two bozos off the street. We're people who have some credentials and are successful in our lives. Like, if you join our Facebook group at ChooseFI.com/Facebook, you can see us personally. We're not sketchy people. We're just regular guys. And if you can see that this is real, you join our Facebook group and you see now over 2,600 people in there, and people are really doing this. So like, it's not too good to be true. But to get back to kind of Art's question about should we keep this to ourselves, I understand the point, and I don't think at any point in time this FIRE concept is going to spread to even 10% of the population. Like, that would be a miracle in my opinion. But even 1%, right? What do we have? 330 plus million people in America. And that's just America. Obviously, I don't want to exclude our international audience, which is pretty amazing in and of itself. But just looking from the small level America perspective, that would be over 3 million people who would be living a FI lifestyle if it's just 1%. Like, is that going to change the economy for the worse? I understand what he's saying, and I suspect some of it, or most of it, is tongue in cheek, that everything would grind to a halt if we all didn't spend. And listen, there are always going to be 90+% of people in all likelihood who are going to keep going on their spendy ways and keep the economy bustling. But I think it's our duty really to spread this superpower, right? That's what we're constantly talking about, is there are people in your life who are natural for this community. And you know them, right? Because over the years or decades that you've known these people, they maybe have talked about their 401k or cutting coupons or just doing something little. Think about those people. And when we say the FIRE is spreading, that's not just ChooseFI. This is not about ChooseFI at all. It's about growing this FI community. So how can you do that? And this is incumbent upon you. We cannot do this ourselves. We need you out there who are already listening to this podcast twice a week and reading Mr. Money Mustache and The Mad Scientist and Coach Carson and 1500 Days and all these places. You're consuming this, but you can't just sit on it. Think about 3 people in your life who, over the years that you've talked about something financial with, and go out on a limb and send them our Pillars of FI episode, or send them the shockingly simple math behind early retirement article from Mr. Money Mustache, right? Like, those are pretty easy ways to get people, at least see if they're interested, right? And like, you just never know when you can build up that community. And, Jonathan and I, the new word that we're using is ecosystem, right? Like, how can we create a community and this ecosystem that helps the entire FI community? And that means, we're going to start organizing local meetups certainly throughout America and hopefully throughout the world. So like, one thing we would love.
I just want to pause you for just a second. Just the fact, like, I get so excited when you said possibly the world, the idea of being able to organize local meetups around the world. Sign me up. Please, I have my hand in the air right now. I want to be a part of that.
Yeah. And why couldn't we travel, right, to these places and pop into a meetup here or there? Like, there's no reason that can't happen. Like, or even just like Skype in. Like, how cool would that be if there was a meetup in, I don't know, Moscow? I think one of our members in our Facebook group, I think, said he's from Moscow. Like, why can't there be one there? And why can't we Skype in? Like, how freaking amazing would that be? But one thing I would like to ask for now, and people to reach out to us, is we are looking for leaders of these local meetups. So if you live in St. Louis or Chicago or Milwaukee or Los Angeles or Dallas, wherever you live, and if you'd be interested in helping us organize these meetups, and we can't do it all. It's inconceivable, and we can do the Richmond Boston one, maybe a DC one, but we need your help. So if you want to build that community that we've been talking about for months now, we really need you. So reach out to us at feedback@ChooseFI.com and just send us an email and say, hey, I live in Boston and I'd love to be a leader of the community here. And we're going to help facilitate that as best we can. And you don't need a group already. You don't need to have friends who would be interested in this. We're gonna do what we can over the next weeks, months, even years to try to build these groups and bring the FI community together. So that is our real goal. So again, if you want to be a leader of one of these groups, definitely please get in touch with us.
So guys, the Friday Roundup serves two main purposes. The first purpose is that it allows us to discuss our takeaways from the Monday episode. The second purpose is that it allows us to open up the floor to our community to draw in feedback and new ideas. And today I have a voicemail to play for you from James, who wanted to share his travel rewards redemption trip. And give me just a second, Brad. I will pull this up.
Good morning, guys. I wanted to call in and give my frugal win of the week. Using Chase Ultimate Rewards points from our Chase Sapphire Reserve sign-up bonus, I booked flights from Nashville to Athens, Greece, and then Dubrovnik, Croatia back to Nashville for a 2-week trip to Europe. We transferred our Ultimate Rewards points to United and booked those flights for 60,000 points apiece round trip. Had we gone through the Chase Ultimate Rewards website, it would have been around 90,000 of our points, so we get to keep those extra 30,000 points for future travels.
That's pretty cool, man. So that again is using United. I found United to be very useful as well, as it gives you tons of flexibility with where you go. And I think he said they went to Croatia. How incredible is that?
Yeah, that's definitely on the bucket list for my family for sure. I've certainly seen many, many pictures. So that's a future trip. But yeah, I mean, James hit this on the head. And what's so interesting, actually, Jonathan, is that it's the exact opposite of what went down with your trip to South Africa, right? So when you have Chase Ultimate Rewards points, you have two main options. You could always cash them out for 1 cent per point, but that's not the ideal. But for travel, you have two options. You can book through the Chase Ultimate Rewards portal, or you can transfer them to one of the travel partners, right? And there are currently 11 of them, of which United is generally our favorite for international flights. And what you did when you booked your trip to South Africa is you said, okay, this is going to be 80,000 miles if I transfer them to United and then book on, let's say, South African Airways, okay, because they're a Star Alliance partner. So you could just do that at the United website when you found the award availability, which is, pretty straightforward. Or I can at least mock it up through the Chase Ultimate Rewards portal and see how many miles it's going to be. Maybe there are amazing deals from Richmond or Washington, D.C. down to Cape Town. And that was actually what you found. I don't remember the exact amount, but you spent far fewer than 80,000 Chase Ultimate Rewards points each for each of those round trips. So that was an instance where that was a clear slam dunk winner. But in James's case, where he said it would have been the opposite, right? So he was able to transfer 60,000 Chase Ultimate Rewards points to United for each round trip ticket to Europe. And that wound up saving him, I think he said 30,000 miles. So that's 30,000 Chase Ultimate Rewards points that are still sitting there that he did not need to use on this Europe trip and he can use for future redemption. So that is just like the way that you want to approach having those points. And as we've discussed previously, those are our favorite points to get started with just because they are so valuable and diverse with the transfer options. So, he said Chase Sapphire Reserve. There's also the Chase Sapphire Preferred, which is generally the first card that we recommend. There's like a Chase Inc. Business Preferred card, and then some other cards like the Chase Freedom and Freedom Unlimited and things like that all earn these Ultimate Rewards points. So that is really a good place to start. And both your example, Jonathan, and James's really illustrate instances for the audience to learn like how you approach this concept mentally. So I think it's really valuable. And aside from that, congrats, James. That's a killer trip. So that's really, really cool.
Yeah, I kind of want to put together like a travel rewards achievement list, and it's definitely going to have some different countries on there. It's for the people that want to kind of build this achievement list into their bucket list and their bucket list into their checkpoints of FI list. Let's see how it all ties together. We need to like build an app, dude, that like allows you to track these sorts of progress. So I know that Veronica in our Facebook group has actually started creating achievement badges that you can post on your website or blog. And they look so good. I want to put it on our website. I mean, it's awesome, but there's so many talented people in our Facebook group, everyone from graphic design to software design. And I wonder if maybe we couldn't crowdsource or partner with a software developer in our community to start thinking about how we can create an app that will help us accomplish this goal of creating this ecosystem, and maybe incorporate like the milestones of FI, the checkpoints of FI, and maybe this bucket list, this travel rewards achievement list, some way of putting all that together. I think that would be really cool. We should look into that, Brad.
Yeah, I like it.
So this next voicemail, Brad, is actually from Rachel. And Rachel has this really cool idea on how to hack your TSP to get farther ahead on your student loans and pay them down early and save on interest. I think it's kind of similar to the HELOC mortgage idea that we see floated out there, but this one to me has real legs on it. So I'm going to go ahead and play this.
Hey guys, this is Rachel from Arkansas. I wanted to talk to you a little bit today about being a government employee and one potential benefit for paying off your student loans. A couple weeks ago on Millennial Revolution, their May 24th blog, they talked about using a 401k in order to potentially pay off your student loans. Basically, being a government employee, you have access to a TSP, which is Thrift Savings Plan. And the TSP allows you to make a loan to yourself. There's a $50 flat fee to make a loan to yourself. And there's kind of some weird rules about exactly how much you can loan yourself out of your TSP, but the short version of the story is in the lowest kind of qualification tier, you can loan yourself up to $10,000. And in the highest qualification tier, you can go all the way up to $50,000. The cool thing about this is that you loan this money to yourself and then you pay yourself back the interest. So instead of paying the interest to your student loan provider, you're paying the interest to yourself. The other cool thing about this is that the TSP loan is at the percentage interest rate of whatever the G fund is currently returning for the year. So right now, the G fund return is 2.25%. So basically what I can do, let's say I have a $10,000 student loan, I can loan myself that money out of my TSP. And let's say that loan is, somewhere around 5.5%. I loan myself that money out of my TSP. I pay the $50 flat fee, which for up to $10,000 is 0.05%. And then I pay myself back at 2.25% for a total of 2.3% compared to the 5.5% that I'm paying somebody else. There are some people who try to say that there's double taxation here, but that's actually not the case. The actual case is that if you have a traditional TSP, you put the money in tax-free, so you're also accumulating the money to pay these student loans, depending on what tax bracket you're in, at potentially a 30% faster rate than you would be if you were using after-tax dollars. Now, you do pay yourself back with after-tax dollars, but again, you're paying yourself, and you're paying yourself at a lower interest rate. So really, it comes out best for everybody because this also means that in the long run, you're actually putting more money in your own retirement account. So that's what I'm doing as a government employee. I've increased my TSP contributions to try to get to an amount that's significant enough to pay off a student loan of mine faster, and then I will pay myself back, and then I will lather, rinse, and repeat until I have paid off all my student loans. I hope this helps somebody, and again, I would definitely recommend that you check out the Millennial Revolution Investment Workshop number 28 to hear a little bit more about this. And I'd love to hear you guys kind of run through it on the air with some numbers so that people can assess how it could help them. Now, this may or may not work as well if you have a standard 401k, depending on what penalties and fees and repayment rates you have to do. But at least for government employees, I think it's a really great idea. Thanks.
That's a potential game changer, isn't it, Brad?
Yeah, that's really interesting. I'd never heard of this before, but yeah, it sounds like a winner. And this is kind of the stuff that we just love about our audience is so many people out there have so many smart ideas and little hacks that really move the needle. So yeah, thank you, Rachel, for sending this in.
And what's cool about this idea is that it passes the smell test. It's simple. It's just looking at the problem a little differently. So in my mind, Brad, there are a few different storylines that we need to tackle. We have not done a great job of looking at the TSP or the government path to FI or the military path to FI that's on our radar. There's a few other storylines that I know we've said we want to tackle. What about the person that finds FI late in life? The single path to FI, low income FI. There's a bunch of different ways to tackle this journey. But in particular, in my mind, we have not really explored the TSP. And so I know that we have some people in our audience that are very good at this, that have really been able to explore it. So we're hoping we can kind of crowdsource and draw from our audience and from our audience's experiences to really help peel back the curtain on what other people have figured out. And to me, this voicemail is a perfect example of something that will benefit thousands of people in our audience and show them something that they had never considered. And hopefully you can go and look into how you can implement this in your own life over the next couple of weeks. And Brad, I guess we could probably link to that article or investment series that she talked about from Millennial Revolution as well. See if that would help you get a little bit closer to your goal there.
Yeah, you bet. I'll definitely link that up in the show notes to this episode. And yeah, just like always, you can get our show notes sent to you via email if you just head over to ChooseFI.com/subscribe. And yeah, we'll just send you an email every time we post a new article or a new episode, and you'll get our show notes.
So guys, you know how passionate Brad and I are about this community. And if you're enjoying the show, if you're getting value from the show, we have tried to make a special effort to ensure that you are getting a great user experience this entire time. And if you want to support what we're doing, the best way for you to support us currently is if you decide to execute on your travel rewards plans, just include us as part of that journey. Open up the credit card using our credit cards page. And to go to our cards page, you can just go to ChooseFI.com/cards. On that site, the best offer for those cards will always be featured, and use that page when you start executing your travel rewards plan. And the cool thing about it is, because we learn just as much from our audience as you learn from us, once you've actually taken the time to piece together a trip and either have it scheduled or have gone on it, call in our voicemail line and let us know what trip you took. We would love to feature that as part of the show going forward. And honestly, your creativity helps spark creativity in us and in our audience as well. So thank you so much for supporting the show. We appreciate you guys. Okay, guys. So as you know, we try to finish up every one of our Friday roundups by reading some feedback that we got from our community, and specifically feedback in the forms of iTunes written reviews. And we have a couple things going on that's kind of cool. So let me just catch you up to speed real quick. One is that every Friday, we always do a drawing for a copy of several books that we found useful. And we do J.L. Collins' book, The Simple Path to Wealth, and also Dominic Cortuccio's book, Design Your Future. And I should just say that in order to participate in that drawing, all you need to do, just go to ChooseFI.com/iTunes, follow the instructions there to leave us a short written review. And then once you've done that, just shoot us an email to feedback@ChooseFI.com, letting us know that you left the review, and we will enter you into the drawing to win a copy of one of those books. And we typically do one book for every 5 written reviews that we get. And we would love to include you in that. And for Brad and myself, that's just kind of this virtuous circle type thing where we realize that you're helping us out. I mean, you really are helping us out. You're actually committing and giving this show your stamp of approval and saying, I place value in this show and I want other people to know about it. So it's an unbelievable value to us, but we also wanted to make sure that we were giving back. And this is a great way for us to just participate that and hopefully add value back to your life as well. And we've had good feedback on it so far. So thank you. That's something that we're going to continue to do. Right now though, and all the way up through the period of the 28th. So you're hearing this on the 25th, all the way up through the 28th, we're doing an additional contest, which is going on at the exact same time. And you can qualify for it just doing the exact same thing that I just talked about. And we actually have a single ticket available for the camp down in Florida that we've been talking about. We've been talking about the value of community, and this camp has sold out all of its tickets. But Steven, the coordinator of the camp down in Florida, reserved one ticket for us because he wanted to basically give something back to this community, which he has been enjoying for the last 6 months as well, just being a part of. And so if you take the time to leave us a written review and you send us an email at feedback@ChooseFI.com, just letting us know that you left us a review and that you would also like us to enter you in that drawing for camp. We are going to collect all the reviews that we got up through the 28th of August, and then we are going to announce that winner on September 1st, that Friday roundup. And you still are in the contest for the books. You're still in the drawing, but this is this extra little thing that we get to do, and we're very excited to offer it. So I encourage you, if you have been wanting to leave us a review this whole time, but just life gets in the way, but you're very interested in doing that, please let this be that extra little incentive. Just go to ChooseFI.com/iTunes. Just leave us a short written review, and we would love to also include you in this drawing, both for the books and also for that single ticket to the camp down in Florida. And it would be really cool to see you there. So thanks so much for being a part of this. All right, Brad, how many reviews do we have today?
All right. Actually, because I was on vacation and these things kind of piled up, we're giving away 4 different books today. So yeah, we're going to try to quickly read 4 different written reviews here. All right. And the first winner is Bill. And Bill said, "This is a winner. I've been listening to Dave Ramsey and Clark Howard for a few years. They are fine and have been helpful, but I wanted some fresh perspectives. I found them on the ChooseFI podcast. I'm glad to have found you and look forward to new episodes. I'm selectively going through the episodes in the back catalog, and we'll have them finished in a couple of months." So yeah, thank you, Bill. That's a great review. We appreciate it. And yeah, really cool that you found us after listening to Dave Ramsey and Clark Howard. Okay, and our next winner is Emily.
And Emily says, "Great motivation and inspiration. My husband introduced me to you guys, and I've been a fan ever since. You always have the best tips and advice in the fire world. Give these podcasts a listen. You won't be disappointed. I promise. It may even change your life.
All right, our third winner is Jackie, and Jackie called this the advanced class for FI. As someone very close to retiring extra early in my 40s, this podcast is right on time. It hits on so many of the issues I have to consider, and I've shifted many times as a result. I love the guests, interviews, and very active discussion after each podcast. This is the best resource I have found for fire. Keep up the great work. All right, and our final winner is Austin.
And Austin says, the PhD of FI. I've been exploring FI and minimalism for the past few years. Most podcasts on these topics are very similar, and intriguing introduction with information all very similar. Then I stumbled upon ChooseFI. I am hooked. Each episode is an intro class followed by the master's component and then wrapped up with information on how to get the PhD content to become a master of FI. Most importantly, the content matches the hype as I've converted my wife and several friends into devout listeners. Thank you so much for the work you do. Thank you so much, guys. It's very rewarding being a part of this. Frankly, this movement at this point, you can almost feel it. We're onto something here. The fire is spreading, my friends, and we'll see you next time as we continue to go down the road less traveled.
You've been listening to ChooseFI Radio Podcast, where we help middle-class America build wealth, one life hack at a time.